We never expect it when it comes. There are those things in life that we yearn and yearn for. It becomes our adoration. It becomes our savior, our soulmate, and our obsession and loved one. It becomes our addiction. It becomes our monster and slave master. I finally found it, myself. It perched on my shoulder, a towering, whispering weight, echoing fallacies in my eardrums. It sat there for years, each day a rotting, crooked claw creeping towards my throat. This time, I would find it lying cold and asleep. I just had to wake it up, throw my arm around its shoulder, and beckon the world to come forth. It was dreary, angry, and alone, but no longer, with my arm wrapped around it. It was my fear. My fear that could be. A fear of all things evil, corrupt, or sinister. It was that latent horror of the cosmic unknown, sometimes even the indefinite voices of the figures that I could not see and only imagine. When I realized just how important fear was to me, I sought it out. No, perhaps not, it searched for me. I think we may have met somewhere in the middle, because while I always had this pining for fear, I always felt it just beyond my reach. Until today. Until it finally found me. I was having what I would refer to as a perfectly normal day. The cup of coffee, work until midnight, then come home to strip naked and float beneath the surface of a tub of water, my blood mingling with the warm liquid. It wasn't suicide by any means. I simply wished to feel something. It wasn't fear, it was pain. Unfortunately, pain wasn't nearly close enough to fear. It was unfortunate that, out of all the emotions I wished to experience, the only one that crept upon me as a necessity was fear, the one emotion that cannot inflict itself upon me. As I lay there in my own blood, I became lost in my thoughts. I no longer felt the pain. I no longer worried about bleeding out and dying, missing any opportunities I would have had to experience terror at its fullest. Cuts to my arm seemed to heal almost overnight, as if my body had gotten used to the mutilation. My body lurched as I sat up, clutching the sides of the tub and lifting my wet body over the tub. Water and blood dripped to the floor and flowed down the drain, an opaque mixture, almost pink under the dim bathroom lights. I like to imagine that spiders in the pipes and drains were still there after having been washed down by a young child or someone afflicted by arachnophobia. I could picture the spiders on the insides of the pipes, holding on for dear life, living off the small nutrients flushed after them. It bothered me to think that people would flush the poor spider down a hole simply out of fear. If anybody knew how important fear was, maybe they'd have let the spiders stay. That way, if they were truly afraid of that minuscule spider, they could wait to find it creeping up on their pillow next to their head in the middle of the night, and they could scream in fear. That way, they could succeed where I have always failed. I shook my head and stared at the mirror in my bathroom. The mirror was the only place within my apartment that really felt like my domain. I owned nothing in this dismal room. I paid rent. I worked a job so I could pay that rent, and there was nothing else. The whole apartment was a blank slate, save for the assortment of clothes I had bought from Goodwill. I slept on the floor. This never bothered me. The only thing that bothered me was that I had no interest or need for material possessions. Not wanting these things was much worse than not owning them. But I digress. I stared into the mirror. I looked into its cold flesh, and its daggered eyes stared back into me. I could almost feel the pain coursing through my body as I raised my arms to the mirror. Blood still dripped from them as I stared into the mirror. Then, the realization set in. My eyes began to glaze over as I watched the blood pouring out my arm turn black. Blood was not supposed to be black. Something was wrong. I began to tilt my head. My arms were shaking as the ominous black liquid leaked out. This was so sudden, so unexpected. I didn't have time to prepare. Ah, well. I grinned, realizing my current state was my fate and my lover. My glory and my master. My head hit the bathroom counter violently. The black blood began to envelop my vision. In the faintest corner of my eye, I caught sight of my soulmates and my pain bringers. They were white, featureless except for the gaping, ragged jaw with sharp teeth that could grind the toughest of muscle and destroy the purest of bodies. They had no eyes, only slight indentations where eyes should be. They drooled red, blood, and laughed hatred. Their tongues licked their lips, sounding like a slab of meat hitting a marble tabletop. They came closer to me, their bony, freezing cold fingers caressing my cheek and stroking my arms. I laughed lightheartedly as I turned my head to watch one of their skeletal fingers dig its way into my self-inflicted wounds. It crawled into my skin, moving it around and trying to fit it like a coat. I screamed then and looked away. I could feel their cold bodies all around me. Tears, blood, saliva, and bathtub water was everywhere, and I could see no longer. My mind became clouded, and my world was encased in screams. Finally, I was terrified. Fear was my maker and my ender. Pain was my escort. I died with a smile. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe.